Is there a conspiracy against Donald Trump? What does Jim Webb know that we don't know? Is Joe Biden in or out of the race, that is? We'll talk about all this and more. Here we go.
Get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines on K98.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. The target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage.
Live from the People's Republic of New York City. You're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, everybody? Gene Baradelli here. Not a lot of people around right now. I'm flying solo tonight, mainly because of two reasons. And reason number one, the Mets are currently locked in a battle with the Chicago Cubs. Let's go Mets. Reason number two, there's currently a Brooklyn Young Republicans meeting going on, so Russ Gallo may be there. I know all my audience is there tonight. So, no problem. Everybody's going to catch this on replay. And a quick programming note for those of you listening to the show right now. Starting next week, Behind Enemy Lines Radio will be listed on iHeartRadio. That's right, folks. Another way you can listen to the show, in addition to Spreaker and Stitcher and all the other outlets that are out there. iTunes, of course, we're listed on there as well. Now we're also on iHeartRadio, starting next week. Great news for the show. More audience will be exposed to Behind Enemy Lines. The best kept secret on radio. You guys already know about it, and thanks for tuning in. So let's get down to it right now. We got a lot of ground to cover. A lot of topics to discuss. Topic number one that I want to touch on is really came from an article that I read in the New York Post over the weekend. And the question is this. Is there a conspiracy, a plan, a plot to stop the Donald from getting the nomination? And you know, when you think about this topic, normally you think about the idea that he's a Trump troll and that he's really a Hillary troll. He's really working with the Democrats to kind of undermine the Republican Party. I've heard that before. But I gotta really ask this question based on a couple of points. And let's see if you can follow along the breadcrumb trail with me. I'm not exactly Alex Jones, but I'll dabble in conspiracy theories once in a while just to provoke a little thought amongst you, our learned audience. Point number one on this topic. Plants in the crowds. There's been wide reports that a tried and true method of dirty politics is coming back in style in the Republican primaries. And that is the plant. Or there's actually a very bad term that goes with that what this practice is. It starts with the word rat and ends in an expletive with an ing at the end. I think you could figure out what it is. But it's been going on since time immemorial when it comes to politics. I know in the People's Republic of New York City happens all the time in live debates and town halls and places like this where the opposing side, usually it's the Democrats doing it, puts someone in the crowd to ask a question that you know is on a hard topic, or that you know nobody wants to answer, or does it to embarrass the candidate. Well, in this case, we have a Jeb Bush intern named Lauren Bachelda, and the reason why I don't pronounce that name because there's a Bachelda Street near me in my house here in People's Republic of New York City. Lauren Bachelda, who was in a crowd at the No Labels Summit in New Hampshire, and here is the question she asked and the response that it elicited. As soon as I get the audio queued up here. And here I go again. Here's the audio with Lauren Bachelder right now.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can prove me wrong, but I don't think that you're a friend to women. How, what it...
I knew I shouldn't have picked her. I knew I shouldn't have picked her. All right, so let me give you that answer right now. I respect women incredibly. I have had women working for me in positions that they've never worked in terms of construction, in terms of so many different jobs. I had a woman who was in charge of the building of Trump Tower many years ago, before it was even thought, before anybody would have even thought of it.
I want to get paid the same as a man, and I think you understand that. So if you become president, will a woman make the same as a man? And do I get to choose what I do with my body?
You're going to make the same if you do as good a job. You're going to make the same if you do as good a job, and I happen to be pro-life. Okay? I'm pro-life.
And it led into another question there, but you kind of heard it, right? That's clearly a plan. Now, forget the fact that we found out that is a Jeb intern that was asking the question. But you could just tell by the way it was delivered. If you saw the video of this young woman with her hands on her hips standing there sternly talking to Donald Trump, you knew. Come on, you knew this was a plant to begin with. You knew that there was something fishy there, that this wasn't just a question that came out of the blue. And to be honest with you, like I said, this has been going on for a while now in politics, but I never thought I'd see it within the Republican Party. This, to me, is a sign, folks. It's a sign that the establishment is getting weak in the knees. Their backs cracking, their livers quivering. They're scared, man. They're scared of the grassroots movement. They're scared of the anger. They're scared that they are reaping what they sow now. Let me break it down for everybody here. Donald Trump is the only candidate out there, either side, that is inspiring people to actually come out to see him. Scary thought to some, not so scary to others. To me, it's a matter of you reap what you sow. For too long, the grassroots have been ignored. For too long, the establishment has tried to impose their will on the grassroots movement of the Tea Party, whatever you want to call it. And in response to that, in response to the broken promises of John Boehner and Mitch McConnell to be actual leaders after they won in 2014, in response to the Thad Cochrans of the world using Democrats to win their seat back, in response to the crisis of confidence that the grassroots has in the establishment, you are now reaping what you sow. You are now getting the ear of the outsider. You are now getting Donald Trump, Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson. The list goes on and on. But let's get back to Donald Trump for just 1 second now. Plants in the crowd. Media jumps all over it, of course. I mean, we all remember the plant about the guy from White Plains. Couldn't even get his name. Talking about Obama being a Muslim, and then the reaction from Anderson Cooper and Chris Matthews, all talking about, well, Donald Trump didn't correct the guy. He just placated and moved on. You don't placate someone like that. Come on. If anybody knows a New Yorker, and I know New Yorkers, you end up saying, yeah, sure to the crazy, and then you move on. That's kind of how things are done. But not for nothing, folks. Can you think of another candidate, frontrunner, any frontrunner in history, that has been under more scrutiny than the Donald? How many calls have there been for substantive platforms? Listen, I've been one of them. I got to admit it. I am not a Trump supporter. I am not a fan. I am not one of his guys. I don't have any line to his campaign. I don't talk to them often. In fact, I think I've talked to them once to ask for an interview, which I'm still waiting for, by the way. But when you see the treatment of Donald Trump's campaign versus the treatment of, say, I don't know, Hillary Clinton's campaign, the kit gloves, the front runner treatment that she's been getting, I don't want press here, I don't want press there, and them putting up with it and taking it and still coming back to defend her. Look at the scrutiny Donald Trump's campaign's been getting. You ask for specifics, he gives you specifics. You ask for staying power, he gives you staying power. You ask for a 50-state operation, he's developing a 50-state operation. And he's got donors. The Donald has donors. That to me is the most shocking part of the whole thing. And guess where they're coming from? They're not coming from the top 1% of campaign donors. They're not coming from the multi-billionaires that are like Donald Trump. They're coming from grassroots people. Success breeds contempt. And who is getting more contempt than the Donald right now? And the reason why he's getting such contempt is not because he's a billionaire and he flaunts it. It's not because that he's brash and braggadocious. It's because he said I was going to be the leader and he's the leader. It's because he said once I get into the race, the whole game changes, and the game changed. Give the man credit for that. Donald Trump knows what he's doing when it comes to salesmanship. He knows all about salesmanship. He knows how to play to the crowd. He's been selling himself for years, folks. Campaigning should be second nature. Everybody knows the game right now. Donald Trump has been selling the Trump brand on TV, in media, book sales. He had a board game, for God's sakes. The man knows what he's doing when it comes to retail politicking. He's got the meaning out of the palm of his hand. Whether he can turn that into votes at the polls remains to be seen still. But for right now, Donald Trump has them eating it out of the palm of his hands. And when you look in comparison to the other side, what do you have? Jeb Bush, who's, by the way, his burn rate through his money is quicker than a California wildfire right now. The man is just spending like you wouldn't believe, like there's no tomorrow, spending like a desperate candidate. Most of it's probably going to consultants and campaign people. You got to think they're trying to figure this out. But you got Jeb burning through money, panicking. You got the retreads and the has-beens of, the Lindsey Grahams and the Jim Gilmores and the George Patakis. You got, my goodness, you got the inspiring John Kasich and Chris Christie. I don't know if they inspire anybody else too much, but yawn to me. Especially when Chris Christie trying to act differently than his own personality. Remember in the second debate being the peacemaker? Being the voice of reason? We all know that he's playing to the people. Not inspiring there. And then you got the other two outsiders, Carson and Fiorina. Both making their way as best they can. Carson, I've called him the anti-Trump because he's been making his headway through an opposite means than Donald Trump. And it works for those who don't like the brash and braggadocious. They like the soft-spoken and centered and kindly speak, if you want to call it that. The anti-Trump. And then you have the others that are trying to make their way through, and I'm talking about Rubio, Cruz, and Paul. Rubio and Cruz, probably most favorable comparisons of Barack Obama at this point. Both one-term senators, both charismatic in their own way, both with little or no track record of leadership, but they talk a good game. I personally like Ted Cruz a lot. I think he has some conservative creds. I know people who like Marco Rubio, and I think he's laying in the weeds for waiting for his moment. And then you have Rand Paul, who's gone the way of kind of the Scott Walkers and the Rick Perrys of the world, trying to attack Donald Trump and not getting him anywhere fast. That method isn't working. He needs to get onto a different game plan. But, like I said, you reap what you sow. When you have a Congress that wins the majority in the Senate, expands their already supermajority in the House, and you don't get anything in return for that in the first year of their leadership. And in fact, you get more chaos than you get leadership. Then you reap what you sow. You basically created Donald Trump. You created Carly Fiorina. You created Ben Carson. You have created an angry giant here at the grassroots level that is ready for some radical change. Nobody wants radical change if you're part of the establishment in government, if you're part of the quote-unquote Washington cartel, as Ted Cruz likes to say. The Republican establishment doesn't want change because they have a predictable by-the-numbers formula that they want to win by. The Dems don't want change because they don't expose them for the frauds and the lies that they are. And we're going to be talking about that later in the show, folks. We're going to be talking a lot about the socialist mentality, what Jim Webb has called the nominating base of the Democratic Party. Yeah, they're socialists. We'll be talking about that later in the show as well. But listen, this is just another example of ye reap what ye sow, Republican establishment, and now you have to deal with it. We're going to take a quick little break here. When we come back, we'll be talking about the exit of Virginia's Jim Webb, and we'll be talking about an article that we just posted on www.behindtheallianceradio.us, talking about how the Black Lives Matter movement is now starting to infiltrate and indoctrinate into the two mainstream bastions of the liberal mindset. We're talking about academia and quote-unquote journalism. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines. We'll be back right after these brief words.
This Save Us Chuck Minute is brought to you by Australian Dream Arthritis Cream. My fellow Americans, good old Hillary Clinton seems to have misplaced 2 whole months of emails that coincide with the events in Libya. That, or she didn't send a single email for 60 days. Now, what an odd coincidence. It goes along with the thinking that if there's no body, there's no murder. And Hillary did a great job of getting rid of that body before anyone knew where to even look. In the midst of this, General David Petraeus' resignation and misdemeanor conviction is back in the news. What happened to Petraeus and the ridiculous double standards that's playing out with Hillary brings up some questions. Was it just a smear campaign on the part of the Obama administration to batter Petraeus enough to keep him out of the presidential run? That certainly would help Hillary's 2016 bid, which was predicted after she lost the first time. So, here's to history repeating itself. I'm drinking orange juice. I'm Chuck Woolery. You want to hear more? Get my new podcast, Blunt Force Truth, now at iTunes and Stitcher, or visit bluntforcetruth.com.
So what is Behind Enemy Lines anyway?
This is the true story of two friends living in the People's Republic of New York City who work together and have their conversations taped to find out what happens when conservatives stop being politically correct and start getting real. We are Behind Enemy Lines. Watch your wallet. Part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan.
Separated.
We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Had no idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was
the
fine.
most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Message.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ReadyPA.org, brought to you by ReadyPA, FEMA, and the Ad Council.
I'm Vito.
And I'm Vito, and we're from WNJC's The Vito and Vito Show.
Every Friday at 1 p.m., you can hear Vito and Vito bring you the perspectives of two college-age millennial conservatives who are committed to defending the principles of free markets, liberty, freedom, and individualism from Brooklyn, New York.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vito and Vito Show, and check out our blog posts and articles at VitoandVito.com.
Vito and Vito Show every Friday, 1 p.m. on WNJC 1360 AM, Philadelphia's Renaissance Station in Brooklyn.
It's nothing but the truth.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save
your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org, brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air.
Gene Baradelli back behind Enemy Lines. And folks, another quick programming note. Next week, we got a great guest coming on the show. We are happy to bring you an interview with Roger Stone, former advisor to Donald Trump and author of the new book, The Clintons' War on Women. And believe it or not, folks, you're going to have a chance to get a copy of the book. So tune in for that next week. We'll be explaining more details about that on next week's show. But right now, time to get back to our election 2016 roundup here. Talked about Donald Trump earlier. Let's talk about the Dem side a little bit. You know what? It's a mess over there. You got Hillary, Bernie, and the Three Stooges. Wait. No, you don't. Because you don't have Mo to kick around anymore. Jim Webb is out of the race. He announced it on Twitter earlier today. And, I come not to bury Jim Webb. I come to salute him in a way. Because Jim Webb has really hit the nail on the head when it comes to what the Democratic Party has turned into. On his Twitter account, where he announced that he was withdrawing from the race, and this is his direct quote, "My views on many issues are not compatible with the power structure and the nominating base of the Democratic Party." Wow. That is a heavy statement, especially going forward for Democrats towards nominating their candidate. Jim Webb was too polite to say it, so I'm going to say it. Democratic Party is socialists. That's all there is to it. Jim Webb is saying that the Democratic Party has left me. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. And, if you look at his record, you can understand why he feels that way, because the Jim Webb record is not what the Democratic Party is looking for in a post-Obama America. They're looking to double down on going far left. They're not looking to come back to the center at all, because that means no more free stuff. That means no more Black Lives Matter. That means common sense comes back to the Democratic Party. Jim Webb has a long history of service, and his record is kind of cut and dry. He's a Democrat who, from Virginia, former senator. He's a pro-Second Amendment Democrat. Can you name another pro-Second Amendment Democrat right now, off the top of your head? I'll wait. Yeah, I thought not. He's also a Reagan Democrat, having served as Navy Secretary under Reagan. This is someone who is not your prototypical, give me my free stuff, raise everybody's taxes, 1% bad, Black Lives Matter Democrat. Socialist. Bernie Sanders is dragging the party way to the left, farther left than I think most independent Democrats, Reagan Democrats, moderate Democrats, are willing to go. And their only other alternative is Hillary Clinton right now. Think of it that way, folks. If you were stuck between the welfare state, cradle-to-grave taxes, and the government takes care of every aspect of your life, versus Hillary Clinton, you might have to go the socialist route. I can understand that in some ways, but you know what? In other ways, of course you don't want to go socialist. Come on now. And that, I think, is what people are finding out about the Democratic Party now. Jim Webb left with a thud, guys. Not a thud of him falling, a thud of the door slamming as he leaves the Democratic Party for a possible independent run. I say run, Jim, run. Absolutely do it right now. I think what you have to do is you have to pull your party back, right? Pull your party back to the center. Do that. That is your mission. Get it done. Have you and your fellow Reagan Dems send a message to the Democratic Party that you're tired of being pulled to the left, that you're not a socialist. I agree with this wholeheartedly. A YouGov poll recently found that Democrats that they polled have a 49% favorable view of socialism and only a 37% favorable view of capitalism. That's shocking, folks. The same poll had 78% for Republicans for capitalism, 12% favorable for socialism. And that 12%, folks, listen, we're going to come out and we're going to find you and we're going to get your registration changed. Because clearly, you are not the Republicans that I think of in the Republican Party. But I digress for a moment. The shrinking tent that is socialism is affecting the Democratic Party, in my opinion. And Jim Webb is the new poster child of what's happening there. If he runs independent, let's talk about that for a second. It cuts both ways, in my opinion. You're gonna see like those Reagan Democrats we've been talking about, leaving Hillary, leaving Bernie, leaving the Socialist Party, and stating that they are, in fact, Democrats. And depending upon who the Republican nominee is, it may hurt them as well, because some moderates from, the Republican Party, those rhinos out there, you know who you are. I'm not going to point, but you know who you are. You might run that way too and say, hey, this guy's just moderate enough to work. Who knows? You know what, though? I still say run, Jim, run. It'll be a principled run. it'll be a run to save the soul of the Democratic Party. I think something needs to be done. Anything needs to be done to drag the party away from the abyss that is socialism. I mean, did anybody really listen to this debate? Debbie Wasserman Schultz put out a Vine talking about how the debate was about the middle class. The debate was not about the middle class. The debate was about free stuff, giving things away. Bernie Sanders wants to add another $18 trillion to the deficit with all the free stuff that's going to be given away. Free is not free, folks. Those of you who listen to the show all the time, you know this. Free does not mean free. Free means other people pay for it and I get it. Run, Jim, run. I say do it. You're right about the nominating base of the Democratic Party. Look at who is running the asylum right now. It's the inmates. It's Black Lives Matter. When a question comes up to the Democratic debate of, do Black Lives Matter or do all lives matter? Are you kidding me? The candidates up there that said Black Lives Matter are doing nothing but pandering to the crowd. Of course, in their heart of hearts, they believe every life matters. But they're talking about Black Lives Matter because those are the people that are going to be coming out and bringing the people out to vote. That's who their core is. That's who their base is now. It's a shrinking base. That's why if the Republicans can get their stuff together, man, there should be no question, given what happened in 2014. There should be no question, given the quality of the candidates in our field. There should be no question that any one of our guys, except for the retreads and the has-beens, sorry you guys, except for the retreads and the has-beens, any one of these candidates should be able to win because they're not socialists. If you make the race about the soul of America, if you make the race about socialism versus capitalism, if you make the race about you deserve to say what happens to your money, if you make the race about you're the one in charge of your destiny, not government, if you make the race about America's greatness is in its citizens making its own decisions, you win. And I say that because in that same YouGov poll that I've been talking about, independents were the lowest favorable category when it came to views on socialism. The independent voter does not identify themselves as socialist. The independent voter favors capitalism. The independent voter favors independence. The independent voter favors government staying out of their affairs. The independent voter favors charting their own course, making their own destiny with their own money, and they don't care about which party that delivers it to them. If the Republican Party jumps on socialism all day, every day, they win. You better pray Bernie Sanders is the candidate. If Bernie Sanders is the candidate, you win. Every Republican out there, tell your Democratic friends, vote for Bernie Sanders. And then, every Democrat out there who got Bernie Sanders in, vote for Jim Webb. Split your ticket. And Republicans win. That's the bottom line. That's one way they can have a path to victory this year, coming in 2016. Run, Jim, run. I say do it. You're absolutely right about your party. The nominating base of the Democratic Party is socialist now. This is a man, again, Jim Webb. He stood on principle. He was critical of the Iraq War. He took a stand. He advocates for veterans' issues. This guy sounds almost like a mainstream Republican. Pro-Second Amendment, like we said. Run, Jim, run. I say split the ticket, and you'll get a Republican in the White House for sure come 2016. But now let's give a little lip service to the other guy that's kind of the 500-pound gorilla in the room. Uncle Joe Biden. He's still lurking about. We're with the will he or won't he game going, aren't we, folks? The clock's running out, though, Joe. Tick-tock, tick-tock, my friend. Time for you to finally decide what you want to do with the next 4 years of your life. At this point, does it matter? It might be too late. After the debate, the same YouGov poll that before the debate said 57% said it wasn't too late for Uncle Joe to get in. After the debate says 48%. Dropped down quite a bit over a week, 9%. dropped down and said, Uncle Joe, your window's closing. Time's almost up. And you know, if the Washington Post had anything to say about it, Joe Biden would be in right now. Did everybody see the WAPO screwed up? They claimed that Uncle Joe was in the race. They claimed that he was going to be announcing, and we still have no announcement. Then they quickly took down the post saying that they were anticipating. Newspapers do this all the time. They write stories in anticipation of things happening. They were anticipating Uncle Joe getting into the race. Well, okay then. Great job, WAPO. That's why, you know, mainstream media is in the state it's in. And thanks for giving me a platform in the new media. You know, I'm just a blogger and all that. Giving us a chance to get a swing at the plate here. You know what, folks? It's kind of strange when you think about this whole Democratic field. You know, you talk about the chaos in the Republican field and how we have all these voices clamoring for the same votes. On the other side, you got people anticipating, are we going to get anything better than what we have? And that really typifies the divide between the parties right now. As much as you think the Republican Party doesn't have their act together, they have it more together than the Democrats do, because the Democrats are left wanting for more. They're not happy with Hillary. They're not happy with Bernie. They're not happy with the two stooges. Well, it used to be three stooges, but now it's down to two. And who would be with this field? I mean, talk about lack of diversity. I know that we talk about Black Lives Matter when it comes to the Democratic Party, but what about black candidates? Don't they matter? I mean, the Republicans have a wide spectrum of black candidates, Hispanic candidates, female candidates. They run the gamut. Age ranges going from young to old. Democrats, you got really two choices. You got white male and old. You got white female and old. You got socialist. You got, you know, whatever the poll says is good this week. Those are your choices right now if you're a Democrat. No wonder you're clamoring for Uncle Joe Biden to come in. It's going to get even more interesting as the days, weeks, and months tick away as we head towards 2016, folks. You know, I've been doing a lot of Dem bashing this segment of the show. We are at halftime. I want to thank everybody for listening. This is Gene Baradelli. Russ Gallo is gone this week. You're listening to Behind Enemy Lines Radio, and while I got you listening, check out our website. That's www.behindenemy-linesradio.us. Check us out on Facebook and on Twitter at BEL_radio. And if you miss any part of the show, check us out on replay. We're available on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbay, Player FM. The list goes on and on and on. We're adding more every week. We're going to take a quick break right now. Like I said, I mentioned Reverend Al Sharpton. We're going to give him a little bit of equal time. Because I did a little Dem bashing. We got to give a little equal time. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines. We're going to have a little fun right now with the Reverend Al. We'll be back right after the Reverend Al.
The show will be right back. But first, a word from Al Sharpton.
Good evening, Rev. Thanks
Good evening,
to
Rev.
you, Ed. Is this Groundhog Day 2? We are watching that was Attorney General Eric Holder, ABDs, about some Republicans at home are already beating the drums of war. Today, the Pentagon refuted that claim. And he said the American people do not want him to, quote, dwiddling, they do not want him dwiddling his thumbs. You can get a gig as a contortionist. Intravenous fluids and pills coated with gelatin. We don't leave our women or men in uniform behind. It's a monument to the hubris of Dick Cheney, Representative Raul Labrador. Years of abuse. I personally apologize to Mr. Peebles. Just ask to soon-to-be former Congressman. Democrats are outright jitty. CIA's counterterrorism center. Veteran Affairs Secretary Shinseki. Why do I always mess up his name? Shinseki. I love my critics. I have fun with that.
Politics Nation with the Reverend Al Sharpton starts right now. Good evening, Rev.
Good Good evening, Dr. Dyson.
But wait, there's more.
And we will much about that be committed. So there's no real conflict. Michael Druniak, including Lincoln himself, Daniel Day-Lewis. Behind Monica Lewinsky, the one and only Trey Songz is here. But Allison Lundergan Grimes, Gina De-Jesus, when Gina De-Jesus, Tea Party challenger Matt Bivens. People don't want to have their Social Security overall. The Republican savior, Mark Rubio's big night in evolution and Galileo. I mean, this whole thing of Galileo. America's changed. Unless IT and Skillets, President Putin doing something similar back in, it won't change this fundamental fact about the GOP. Just how absurd these attacks is. Nearly 6 months after the dangerous traffic jam, the Thai military says, my friend for many years, Ilyana Van Zandt. There's nothing there.
And they gave this guy a TV show? Let's get back to our show.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines. And folks, again, quick programming note. Next week, Roger Stone coming on the show, former advisor to Donald Trump's presidential campaign, author of the new book, The Clintons' War on Women. We'll be talking a little bit of Hillary bashing, and of course I'm going to ask him what it was like to work for the Donald during this campaign and how his relationship with him is right now. But that's for next week, folks. Tune in for that. And of course, let's round out this show a little bit. Got a few other things to talk about. First, I think I have to say this a little tongue-in-cheek. For those of you who don't know, I'm kind of a big sports guy. Mets are doing well, thank goodness, first time in a really long time, and we're having a lot of fun with that. We also have a little bit of a fantasy football league going with a bunch of our friends here behind enemy lines and with the Brooklyn Young Republicans, and I have to publicly acknowledge Russ Gallo beat me last week. He trounced me, folks. I've had some injuries. I'm making no excuses. He beat me. He basically has the entire New England Patriots on his team, so whatever. Congratulations, Russ. It's on tape. You won. And we're going to move on with the show now. I had to do that. It was a little bit of a bet. Whatever. So, definitely check out our blog, www.behindthelinesradio.us. The top story on there right now is something I want to talk about, because it cuts a little deep and it cuts a little personal to me. For those of you who don't know, in the People's Republic of New York City, there's a couple of different newspapers. Of course, everybody knows the New York Times. Huck Tui. I can't believe I just said their name on air. There's the New York Post, of course, which is more the conservative-leaning paper. Newsday is like on Long Island. We don't really count them. Don't tell them, but we don't really count Newsday as really anything. It's like a Long Island paper. And then there's the New York Daily News, which tries to hide their liberal bias as best they can. Try to be down the middle. They try to be, quote-unquote, fair and balanced. And I gotta be honest, I've been reading them for most of my life. Well, that ends today, folks. A couple of reasons why. I found out recently that Shaun King, the white guy who pretends to be black, that is an activist in the Black Lives Matter movement, but he lied about his parentage, and he lied about a, quote-unquote, bias incident that happened to him in the 90s. You know the story on him. He's like the male Rachel Dolezal, for those of you who don't remember. The story broke in early September, late August, about him. Well, he's gone from breaking the stories to writing about the stories for the New York Daily News, folks. And this is also in the context of the Daily News firing and failing to renew the contracts of many credible journalists, including some friends of mine. I'm not going to make it personal and mention their names. They're looking for work right now, and any New York media person out there that's looking for quality work, check out who the Daily News let go. Grab them up right now. They're quality, good journalists. I've worked with them in the past. I've spoken to them in the past. I've interviewed them on this show. Much better than some known, lying, racist, biased hack writing for this newspaper. Shaun King wrote a story that appeared in the Daily News talking about an incident in Virginia where a young black male high school graduate was on the football team, Patterson Brown Jr., was shot by a plainclothes off-duty police officer. And the end of the story talked about how this was the 25th young black male killed by the police in 2015. But he left out several details of the story that matter, pardon the pun, Sean, that matter to all people. He left out the fact that the gentleman who was shot, and it's a tragedy any one time anybody gets shot, he left out the fact that an eyewitness accounted that Mr. Brown looked like he was going for a weapon when the police officer shot once. He also shaded the fact that Mr. Brown, this high school graduate, football player, promising potential pro athlete, stole the car of the plainclothes police officer. He didn't say stole in his article. He said commandeered the gentleman's vehicle and then did not leave it when he was asked to get out. He stole a car and was ordered out of it by a police officer and didn't follow the order. And then, according to eyewitness accounts, it looked like he was reaching for a weapon. This is not journalism. This is advocacy in the worst possible way under the color of journalism. And before everybody gets into a tizzy, listen, I realize what we are here behind enemy lines. I'm not a news show. Russ and I don't do the news. We're advocacy entertainment. It's a little phrase I like to use. Advocacy entertainment. We're not here to give you the fair and balanced view. We're not even here to report the news. We're here to have an opinion and back it up. And be entertaining along the way. That's our job here. We make no illusions about it to you, our audience. We think that you're smart enough to recognize that if you're tuning into this show, if you're tuning into other shows like Hannity, if you're tuning into other shows like Rush, if you're tuning into other shows like Bill O'Reilly and the O'Reilly Factor, to Megyn Kelly, to any number of shows, Hugh Hewitt, Dennis Prager, the list goes on and on, you are not only looking to be informed about an opinion of the host, you're also being entertained by them and their personality and their little quirks. I listen to John Gambling here in the People's Republic of New York City, and I listen because of his mannerisms. I want to learn from the best. He's been doing this for years and years. And I listen because I'm entertained not only by the knowledge that I'm receiving and the opinions that I'm getting, but by the personality that I'm listening to. Sean King is not a journalist. Let's get that out of the way right now. Sean King is an advocate for a position. I may not agree with the position, you may not agree with the position, but let's call it what it is. He has an opinion, and he advocates for it. By the Daily News hiring him to advocate for a position under the color of delivering news, he is doing not only a disservice to the readers, he's creating a greater divide in our nation by creating yet another echo chamber where people can say, oh, that's a news report. That's actually what happened. No, it's not actually what happened. That's one man's filter being skewed and delivering you something that actually isn't based in reality. The young man commandeered the car. No, the young man stole the car. The young man didn't listen when he was asked to get out. No, the young man was ordered out of the car and he didn't listen to an authority. And then they don't explain in his article how the gentleman was shot. But in an article from the local paper down there, a real journalist reported that Mr. Brown was going for a weapon, it looked like. And the officer shot once. And by the way, of course, the officer is torn up about it. He was crying on the side of the road when the whole thing happened. Investigation is still pending, of course. But I'm bringing this up not as an example of what happened in this incident. I'm bringing this up as an example of what happens when the media decides to indoctrinate instead of just give the news. Another example of this, the same Black Lives Matter movement. There's a new professor at Yale. In case you haven't heard, D. Ray McKisson, of course, one of the faces of the Black Lives Matter movement, teaching a seminar course at Yale. Of course, that's going to be fair and balanced and talking about, real issues and quantifiable and qualitative facts that academia brings to America. No, folks, it's going to be skewed, slanted, and crooked, all in the favor of one person's viewpoint. Listen, I'm not against people having a discussion about all sides of an issue in an academic setting. In fact, that's what I want more than anything else. I want people to be able to talk amongst themselves in an environment where it is safe to do so, and academia is supposed to be that environment. I had a great professor in college, at Manhattan College, where I could talk politics all day long. She was liberal as the day is long. I was finding my conservative voice, and we would discuss issues back and forth, and at the end of the day, we would part knowing that we are both better for the discussion, especially me, because I would be the one learning things. That doesn't happen today anymore. You go to school, you become indoctrinated. You don't go there to become a free, independent thinker. You walk in a free, independent thinker looking to be taught something. And what you end up leaving is, you're leaving a robot. You're leaving as someone who has been given values to put forth that aren't the ones that maybe they would have walked out with had they been given the opportunity to think for themselves. Is that so much to ask? Is that such a big deal now that we must have a demand for equal time? Demand equal viewpoints? Demand that one side get the same amount of time? And come on, folks. This isn't new in academia, by the way. There are student organizations set up right now. FIRE, I can think, is one of them for educational freedom. The idea that you have to actually think about educational freedom is mind-boggling in a free society. But when you have the hippies of yesteryear becoming the academics of today, and when you have those people who learned under them coming up as the new young movement, the cycle just keeps perpetuating itself. That is why Democrats have a 49% favorability view towards socialism. Because it starts when you're in your formative educational years, and you're told that this is the way it should be. Kumbaya, everyone should have everything equally. Not that we should work hard for what we get, not that we should get equal opportunity. See, that's what they leave out about the equal, right, folks? It's the opportunity that's equal. No, everyone should have equal outcome. Well, why don't you tell Secretary Clinton that she should start giving away her money? You know, I actually had, and here's an interesting story, folks. I had a Bernie Sanders volunteer come up to me during a street fair when I was visiting my uncle out on Long Island this weekend. And he was trying to explain to me why Bernie Sanders is the only sound, logical pick to be the nominee for president and to actually be our president. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, what has this man gone through to think that way? And you know what? I started talking to him, and I tried to talk to him as I would my nephew Marcos, who's just in pre-K now. I said, can we agree that everyone should be able to spend their money as they see fit? If I want to walk into that store across the street and patronize it, I can walk in there, I can choose to buy something, I can choose not to buy something. Can we agree that that's the way things should be? He actually went along with it. So I said, great. So how can you tell me that a socialist like Bernie Sanders knows better what to do with my money than what I think? If I should be the master of my own destiny, the king of my own castle, and decide what to do with my money when I walk into that store, why shouldn't I be able to do the same thing when it comes to my health care? Why shouldn't I be able to do the same thing when it comes to my investments? Why shouldn't it be the same thing when it comes to the returns on my investments? What makes him smarter than me? What makes him smarter than you? And then he started to regurgitate some response to me that wasn't really answering the question. And I said, you know what? I think you need to think about this a little more. If you have $10 and your neighbor has $1, are you giving him $5? He said, no, I'm keeping my money. Then you're not a socialist, and stop with this Bernie Sanders nonsense. Come on, man. And that's when he decided to part ways, because he knew he wasn't getting a Bernie Sanders vote out of me. But it goes back to this indoctrination idea that you start when they're young and they raise up, and you're seeing the cycle start over again now. Sean King writing for the Daily News, DeRay McKesson teaching at Yale. Come on, folks. Think critically. Think at all, Democrats. Just use your brain and remember your roots. Your roots are not socialist. Your roots are actually the same as mine, based in American exceptionalism, based in the idea that we all have an equal opportunity to make ourselves great, not in the idea that government is the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. It's time to start using your brains. It's not time to listen to the fanaticism. Not the time to listen to the extreme. And I'll say the same thing to my party. There are some extreme dudes out there in my party as well. I get it. There are people out there that think that we should be off the grid. There are people out there that think we should be bunkered up and ready for war in our own nation. I get it. Nothing extreme ever works. But I think you need to have some values to work, to be credible, to live by. A code, if you will. And my code is think and believe that you can be exceptional. And hopefully one day you will be. But you're not going to get there if you have people like Sean King working at the Daily News, or if you have DeRay at Yale teaching young impressionable minds. Either be the news or report the news, Sean. Either be the message or teach all messages, DeRay. Pick one. You can't have it all the time. There comes a time for choosing. If you want to be part of something that you believe in, go do it. But don't use a medium like mainstream newspaper media to do that. And, you know, all the blame here doesn't go to DeRay or to Sean King. It also goes to the institutions themselves. New York Daily News, I'm looking right at you right now. You just let go so many credible, responsible, reputable journalists. And why? For the almighty dollar, folks. Advocacy entertainment is, hopefully for me as well, a very, very profitable industry. Look at Breitbart, look at the Daily Caller. Look at Huffington Post. Look at the Daily Beast. Look at the Daily Cause. They're all making money, otherwise they wouldn't be around, folks. I'm trying, I'm struggling, I realize that. But we're making some headway. But that model is a profitable model. Being uncontroversial and reporting straight news down the line is not a profitable model anymore. Newspapers are failing going down that road. But if you're looking for truth, and listen, truth is obviously an abstract concept, I get that. If you're looking for unfiltered information, truth, so to speak, you're not going to find it now in the mainstream media, because the mainstream media is a business. They're a business just like the store down the corner. Their job is to sell words, sell information. And they have realized now that there are separate and distinct markets. And those markets want to hear certain things. My market obviously skews conservative. But there comes a time where you have to put the advocacy aside and realize that you have a responsibility to those who come to you for information. And again, this is another example of not thinking that people can think for themselves. Advocacy entertainment caters to a point of view. It should be that we're catering to the opinions of people who have certain views. and to make people look things our way. Yeah, I get that. But at the same time, if you are in print media, if you are on television media, and you are just reporting news, just report news. I can go on and on and on about this whole issue for the whole night, folks. But it's getting close to the end of the show. I want to thank all of you for listening, especially given the fact that we have playoff time going on here in the People's Republic of New York City. Sorry, Philly, although you did get my Giants. Eagles got the Giants, so, you know, you got me. We got playoff baseball here in the People's Republic of New York City. We got Young Republican meetings happening. Almost time for a final thought, but once again, quick programming note. Beyond Enemy Lines, now on iHeartRadio. Check us out there starting next week. You can program us into your mobile device. Take us wherever you want to go. Also available on Stitcher and Spreaker and Podbay and Player FM and a whole host of other outlets out there that I probably don't even know about. Next week, Roger Stone, former advisor to Donald Trump, and the author of The Clinton's War on Women. Lots of interesting nuggets coming on that show. That is a show you don't want to miss, folks. I'm telling you, there's going to be something controversial said. I mean, it's Roger Stone. There's going to be something thought-provoking and controversial said. I mean, this is the guy who's been around in politics so long. He's got to know where all the bodies are buried. You know what I mean? It's going to be a great show. Russell will be back next week to join us as well. Hopefully we'll have the gang around again. That's at the YR meeting. And by the way, shout out to the Brooklyn Young Republicans. Check them out at www.brooklynYRS.com. That's where the show came from, folks. We started out not as advocacy media, but as advocacy radio, trying to drum up volunteers here in the People's Republic of New York City. And we made a difference doing it, winning some races. Final thought time for me is this. Donald Trump, he's not going anywhere anytime soon. I was wrong. I said it on shows that he'd be gone by Christmas. I don't see that happening now. We got a couple more debates coming up. We got a lot more entertainment coming up, that's for sure. The establishment's nervous, folks. The establishment on both sides are nervous. Because things are not going by the numbers this election cycle. Things are not happening according to plan. And when things don't go according to plan, you start doing some desperate things. And desperate times call for desperate measures. What we're seeing right now is some desperation out of both sides. We see some desperation from the Republican establishment when it comes to Donald Trump, the plants in the crowd, and all this other nonsense. We see some desperation coming out of the Democratic Party when we see Jim Webb, who's actually a Democrat and not a socialist, coming out and saying that he may run an independent campaign. And we're seeing the Democratic Party being pulled left, which opens up a lane of victory for whoever the Republican nominee is going to be. It's an exciting time to be involved in politics. It's an exciting time to listen to Behind Enemy Lines. We're going to be bringing you a lot more show in the weeks and months when it comes to election 2016. It's going to be an exciting ride. Check out www.behindenemylinesradio.us. Check out replays of the show. And you know what? It's about time to shut this sucker down, folks. Thanks for listening again. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines. Check us out next week. But for now, we are out of here. Good night, folks.
Our position has been compromised. It's time to roll out. Report for debriefing at www.behindenemylinesradio.us and look for regular communications via Facebook and Twitter at BEL_radio. You are the resistance. Behind Enemy Lines. Part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. A rock radio production. Copyright 2015. Back in 7 days. Out.
The leader in talk radio on the internet. Right here on K98Talk.com.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.